I want to bring in Jamil Jaffer, a former associate White House counsel to President George W. Bush and founder and executive director of the National Security Institute at George Mason University. Jamil, you and I have been talking about, well, frankly, a lot of these matters for quite some time. This was expected to have this now fourth indictment. It's coming out of Georgia. One of the big issues, of course, is that the attorney, Fani Willis, the prosecutor, has said, look, 19 people, no problem. I can do it all in one trial, and I'm going to have a trial date set within 6 months. A lot of people's ears perked up and said, wow, what is the moon like on your planet?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is going to be a tough case for her to pursue with all these defendants. They're all going to try and sever under Georgia law. Some are going to try to move the case to federal court. There's going to be a series of arguments about the very acts that she charges, 161 acts in the RICO count alone. Some of them, fairly early in the process of the day after the election, right? The president making speeches publicly, tweeting stuff out on Twitter. A lot of these things are going to be debated about whether this is free speech, right? The president can debate whether or not, there was fraud in the election, right? I mean, this is a hard case to bring. There are a lot of really legit facts that she cites in her indictment. The things involving the call with Raffensperger that we all heard about, that we've all heard now.
11,780 votes won, yes.
Find those votes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. Which some, by the way, on Twitter are saying, well, find meant find real votes, right? Not find fake votes. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous, right? Find meant discover, create, do whatever you need to do to help me win this election. We all know, I mean, nobody can listen to what the president said, the former president said, without knowing what he was talking about. Nobody's confused about what he was asking Raffensperger to do there.
I don't know, it kind of has reminiscence of what the definition of is, right? It has that lawyers' hands are all over this. But speaking of Mark Meadows in particular, this is an issue people are really leaning into. He's trying to move to federal court, which essentially would mean, it would say in Georgia, by the way, but it would move to the Northern District of Georgia, right. Maybe more conservative than, say, the Fulton County demographics that we know. The whole purpose of that being, he's saying, look, if you're charging me based on things that I did while I was the chief of staff, right, that's under the color of law, my title, and so I get to remove these things. Was that bode well for you? What do you think?
I mean, look, this is an interesting argument. I'm not sure how it goes for him. The statute does say in his official or individual capacity, but it has to be relating to his office and the responsibilities of his office. This is about a political debate that was going to whether his boss would stay in office, right? Not clear. This is under the color of that authority. It's a debatable proposition. At the same time, right, some of these things were taking place in Congress. It's hard to know whether that's going to be a credible case he can bring. Another sort of outside, claim that he might bring, at least the president might bring, is, look, I have civil rights. I can't get a fair trial on my rights under law in state court in Georgia. I need to remove to the federal court as well. We'll see if Donald Trump makes those arguments as well. Hard argument to make, but one that he might put out there as well.
I mean, he's got maybe nothing but time and opportunity to actually get it done. This is now the fourth. I'm sure he'll try a whole sorts of defenses. I want to turn now to what he's been saying and maybe what his thumbs have been typing on things like Truth Social and beyond, because there are some statements that he is making right now as well. One is that he is promising that he's going to hold a press conference. Imagine that. And he's saying that he's going to provide irrefutable proof of election fraud in Georgia. Are you a little stunned, A, that he's going to have this press conference? Probably not. But the idea of the irrefutable proof of election fraud in Georgia, why are we just now hearing about this proof, one? And two, are you surprised he's sticking with this particular path given the new indictment?
Look, I mean, he's said that there's fraud in Georgia now for 3 years. We haven't seen any facts that support that. We've seen repeatedly Republican officials, not just in Georgia, but in other states saying, look, I voted for Donald Trump. I supported Donald Trump. I would have preferred he were the president of the United States, but there was no fraud in our states. We've seen that in Georgia. We've seen it in the state of Washington. We've seen that everywhere.
Also look at this. I mean, we're talking about the Georgia 2020 election, right? You've got people like Brian Kemp, the governor, and among others, which is interesting in Georgia because we're not talking about the talking point of Democrats who are trying to undermine Donald Trump. Raffensperger, Jeff Duncan, obviously Brian Kemp, all Republicans and conservative ones at that, Gabriel Sterling as well. Look at this. He is coming out to suggest that, look, this was not a stolen election by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, look at these numbers. You've got 3 separate ballot counts that actually confirmed Biden's victory. He won there's that magic number. That's why Trump wanted the 11,780. And also that have the request to be made. I mean, the size of the lead here is significant in these key areas. What does this tell you about the fact that you've got these data points and you get this continuous statement?
Look, I mean, the president's going to continue to assert that he won the election, that he should be in office today, and that Georgia was part of that. He's made that point consistently. He hasn't deviated from it. For him to deviate from it now, just because charges have been brought, wouldn't be consistent with where he's been or where he is going down the road. He's going to argue through the 2024 elections that he should have been in office for the last 4 years.
Let's talk about this document, because if you remember yesterday, first of all, we've all been anticipating this particular indictment. But then all of a sudden, something was posted on the docket. Everyone wondered where sort of heads would roll. And then there was the question of Fani Willis about, wait a second, something was posted all of a sudden, and then it was taken down, kind of a yo-yo, take it and give it back, and take it away again. And then she had to answer questions. She said, I'm not going to speculate. She doesn't know how to be a clerk, and she was not one. We're now learning information about this very thing, Jamil, that apparently they did some sort of a test run to figure out how you're going to post this. You're shaking your head because many people were as well going, how about you just post the test document and said the actual word test on it. It has legs, though, and people are trying to suggest that this was a foregone conclusion, that it was always in the cards. It wasn't a fair process. What do you say?
I mean, look, everyone knew these charges were coming, right? We've been talking about this for months, right? We knew the case was being presented to the grand jury. Fani Willis herself said that, right? So there's no question this was coming. You know, should they have done a better job? Should they have posted this the right way? Should they have done a test thing in a better manner? Of course, right? At the end of the day, the reality is the grand jury voted for this indictment. They're behind it. That's the facts on the ground, regardless of whether they tried to post it or not a day earlier. There's no conspiracy here about the grand jury. The grand jury brought the charges. They voted for it. That's the process in the state of Georgia.
I mean, it was earlier that day. It wasn't even a time beforehand. So, of course, the fact that, you know, if you're looking for, they say, if you're looking for a conspiracy theory, you might just find one. But we'll see what happens next. Jamil Jaffer, so nice to see you. Thank you so much.